Who the heck is Zelda and why is she so legendary? As of making this video, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is 27 years old. But you know what's worse? Ocarina of Time 3D, the modern remaster, is 14 years old. When Ocarina of Time 3D released, the original N64 version was 12 years old. That means we're now beyond the length of time that passed between Ocarina 64 and Ocarina 3D. As Sheik says, the flow of time is always cruel. Its speed seems different for each person, but no one can change it. A thing that does not change with time is a memory of younger days. Damn, Ocarina of Time is peppered with philosophical bangers like that. But now that the original version of Ocarina of Time is available on Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 via the N64 Classics app, we can see if it actually lines up with our memories. Specifically my memories, because I've only played the original version through to the end once, and that was on the GameCube about 15 to 20 years ago. Every other time I've beaten this game was on the 3DS, but even then it's been a good few years since I picked it up. So could it still be considered a masterpiece? And for those of you who are new to the series, is it worth playing for the first time? Let's find out. And just for clarity, I used my Switch 2 for this video. Okay, the first thing I noticed when starting this legend of a game was the frame rate. Oh my golden goddesses, the frame rate. 20 FPS, it's like a slideshow. The 3DS version, which runs at 30 FPS, is smooth as hot butter in comparison. It's amazing the difference 10 FPS can make. It does take some getting used to because frame rate doesn't just have an impact on the visuals but also the controls. A game that runs at 20 FPS takes longer to display your inputs on the screen compared to 30 FPS, so the controls feel laggier, heavier. I also remember hearing about a separate input lag issue in the N64 Classics app a while ago, so maybe that's still a thing, even after Nintendo released patches that were supposed to have fixed it? I don't know. I also noticed that the sound effects in Ocarina of Time were slightly delayed, but I have no idea if that's the case in the original N64 version or just another problem with the Switch's emulation. Either way, I did get used to these little niggles, but I thought I'd point them out. Right, let's talk about the story. We start in beautiful Kokiri Forest as a boy without a fairy, who, yes, I named Link because I'm boring. For those who don't know, Link is the canon name of the hero. Anyway, the Deku Tree, protector of the forest, has sent a guardian fairy to guide Link along the path of destiny because stuff is about to go down in the land of Hyrule. In fact, it already has. Link's new fairy friend is called Navi, I see what you did there Nintendo, and has a reputation for being incredibly annoying. I used to think so too, but nowadays, compared to modern companions, Navi is quiet. She will occasionally say hey and let you know where you should be heading next, but it's only one text box worth of dialogue and that's as far as it goes. She can give you information on enemies and their weaknesses, but only if you choose to talk to her. She was annoying back when gamers were used to figuring things out purely on their own or with a guide, but now Navi is a breath of fresh air, especially after playing things like God of War Ragnarok or Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So, after Link exits his treehouse, we're introduced to his best friend Saria. She's happy that Link has finally gotten himself a fairy because the other Kokiri have had guardian fairies for as long as they've existed. Kokiri are forest spirits, so they don't age. Well, actually, according to Miyamoto in an interview before Ocarina of Time released, they do age after they're created by the Deku Tree, but only up to a certain point. They're so connected to the forest that they will die if they ever leave, but they also disappear within the forest after an unspecified length of time, making way for new Kokiri to be born. Unfortunately, none of that is ever revealed in the game, so I'm telling you now in case you get to a certain plot revelation later and start scratching your head. I don't want to spoil the story's major beats for those who haven't played it yet, but Link does manage to exit the forest on a quest to find the Princess of Hyrule, Zelda. The two of them hatch a plan to stop a wicked man of the desert, Ganondorf, from entering a place called the Sacred Realm. If he gets his grubby hands on a holy relic called the Triforce, he could transform the world into one of evil and monsters. On this journey, Link will be able to travel through time. I mean, spoiler alert, I guess, but it's one of the biggest mechanics in the game, and the name is Ocarina of Time, so I kind of have to talk about it. You can play as child Link as well as adult Link, and both have their own sets of dungeons. However, I think adult Link is where the game truly begins. The initial child Link section feels a bit like an extended tutorial. The story of this game, overall, is great. It's an epic coming-of-age fantasy with twists and turns that might legitimately give you goosebumps, but it does show its age nowadays, particularly in terms of the dialogue. I don't know whether it's the localization or if the Japanese text is similar, but it can come off as stilted and childish. Not always, because like I said at the beginning, there are some philosophical bangers here and badass lines from Ganondorf, but sometimes a character will say something like, "You're heading out on a big new adventure, aren't you?" before sending you off to scale an active volcano, as a little kid no less. The reason I point this out is because no other Zelda game features such stilted dialogue going forwards. Even Majora's Mask, which came out not even 2 years later, features better writing and more conversational dialogue. Now, if you're new to the series, you might have seen that the latest tentpole Zelda games are Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They have an open air design where you can go anywhere and tackle dungeons in any order. Ocarina of Time isn't like that. It's more structured with a linear story that's curated from start to finish. The game starts easy enough, but each dungeon you enter gradually increases the difficulty until you feel like a true hero of time by the end of the game. And oh man, I've missed dungeons like this. It's hard to believe the level design is 27 years old because it can stand toe-to-toe with modern games. Even inside the Deku Tree, the first dungeon is great. It isn't massively complex, but it has a nice flow that's perfectly crafted for being a tutorial, and the best thing is that it's designed so there aren't a million options for how to complete it, unlike Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom's dungeons and shrines. Every room has one concrete solution, and I do think there's a unique satisfaction you get from that, as opposed to faffing about with a massive inventory and not knowing whether you're abusing the physics system or using it as intended, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Not that I don't enjoy those games, because I do, but I feel like the puzzle solving isn't quite as satisfying as it is here in Ocarina. In this game, each dungeon houses a particular item that gives Link a new way to progress. The slingshot is the first one, which allows him to shoot skull wultulas and other dungeon obstacles. It can also stun the boss if he shoots it in the eye, making it vulnerable to sword slashes. The gameplay loop of finding a special item and using it to complete the dungeon has been a thing since the original Zelda, but this is its 3D debut and it works really well. So well in fact that it would stay as a formula for every mainline Zelda game going forwards until A Link Between Worlds. My favourite dungeons are all in the adult Link portion of the game. The Forest Temple is probably number one on my list. I mean, look at it. It's styled after an overgrown haunted mansion with 4 pose sisters or ghosts that you need to find. It's also home to an item that's so helpful, not just inside the dungeon but outside of it. Speaking of items, one problem people have for the game is inventory management, specifically changing boots. There are 3 pairs of boots you can find, and in certain locations you'll need to switch them out in quick succession. Problem is, because boots aren't classed as items that can be assigned to the C buttons, you need to pause, scroll over to the equipment screen, and change them from there every single time you want to switch. It's incredibly annoying. Completely fixed in the 3DS version of course, but if you're playing the N64 version on your Switch, you're out of luck. You'll need to switch those boots like Miyamoto intended. But the game isn't just made up of dungeons. After Link exits the forest, he gets access to a semi-open world, is what I would say if this owl wasn't ruining the moment. Kaepora Gaebora, yes that is actually his name, appears a fair bit throughout the game, and every time he finishes speaking, he asks if you want him to repeat what he just said. The default option is yes, so if you've been pressing the A button constantly in a desperate attempt to make him shut up, you might accidentally get him to start all over again. The worst part is that the dialogue in Ocarina of Time moves incredibly slow, so if you're replaying the game and you already know how to check your map, well, it's not fun. Some text boxes you can skip over by pressing B, but they are few and far between. Right, well, now that Kaepora Gaebora has said his piece, we can talk about Hyrule Field, which is the central area of the game. Ocarina of Time has a spoke-like design for its world, with different areas branching off of the main field. There's Hyrule Castle Town, Kakariko Village and Death Mountain, Zora's Domain, Kokiri Forest, Lake Hylia, Gerudo Valley and Lon Lon Branch, but Lon Lon Branch is located within Hyrule Field itself. I think this is a cool design, but the field is pretty empty. There's the odd grotto here and there, which is basically a hole Link can drop down to find rupees or other consumables, and when night falls, he's hunted by skeletons called children, but that's about it. The developers had a reason for this though. As an adult, Link can get a horse called Epona and ride around the open areas of Hyrule. Apparently, according to them, Hyrule Field is so big and empty because they wanted to give players in 1998 that sense of scale while riding. Honestly, let's be glad they even created Hyrule Field in the first place, because originally Ocarina of Time was going to have a Mario 64 style design with Ganon's castle as the hub world. Koizumi wanted a horse in the game though, and thus Hyrule Field was born. But you can't just have a field, you've got to have towns as well connected to it, so say hello to Hyrule Castle Town. This is one of the main settlements in the game that acts as a kind of shopping and minigame hub. It's not that big, but it uses painted backgrounds to give a sense of scale. If you enter this shooting minigame and want to give it a try, good luck to you. On the 3DS with gyro controls, this is a piece of cake, but here, with 20 FPS and high frame times, You almost have to predict the future of where Link's aim is going to be. It's an absolute nightmare. Thankfully, it's optional. Also located in Hyrule Castle Town is the Happy Mask Salesman. He's part of an interesting quest chain involving you selling masks on his behalf and getting a tidy profit, but he'll be even more important in Majora's Mask, so it's cool to see his first appearance. He is a little bit creepy here, but nothing compared to his major role in the next game. Another settlement is Kakariko Village, which may look small, but there's a surprising amount to do, and it has a strangely dark past. For example, there's a house that has a cursed family inside. They're all horrific spider monstrosities, and they beg Link to collect gold Skulltula tokens so that the curse is lifted. Every time you collect 10 tokens, up to 50, you'll get a new reward, like a bigger wallet. There are 100 tokens in the game, but you'll get the main reward at 50. Kakariko also features a graveyard, which is home to Dampé the Gravekeeper. 100% speedrunners love this guy. You can pay him to dig with his shovel, which might net you a piece of heart. Pieces of heart are collectibles that give you another heart of health if you find 4 of them, but it's completely random chance that Dampé will dig one up. Somehow, in this playthrough, it happened on my second try, so I did get super lucky. Not that I was speedrunning the game, but it's nice that I didn't have to waste a ton of rupees to get there. There are so many minigames like this scattered around Hyrule, yes, including fishing, and most of them will give you a piece of heart for your efforts. It's a nice change of pace after you've been racking your brain in a dungeon. The name of the game is Ocarina of Time though, so I should really talk about the ocarina, right? At an early point in the game, Link obtains one, which allows him to learn and play a variety of useful tunes. For example, they can turn day to night, night to day, or summon storms. The most iconic is Zelda's Lullaby, which can open so many doors, both literally and figuratively. You'll hear Zelda's Lullaby in many Zelda games going forwards. But best of all, these songs are beautiful, which is how I would describe the entire soundtrack. It's one of the greatest in gaming history, without a doubt. Koji Kondo composed all of it, and yes, I do mean all of it. The guy's a genius. Hyrule Field is particularly wonderful with a dynamic theme that changes depending on whether or not you're being pursued by enemies. Each dungeon has its own theme too, and they're all fantastic, particularly the adult Link roster. That forest temple theme, man, it's just so, like, the vibes are immaculate. Yes, the instrumental sounds have aged a lot since 1998, and I would love a fully orchestrated version if they decided to remake the game. But despite that, these MIDI tunes are incredibly moving. Watch the end credits and tell me you didn't get at least a little bit emotional. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the combat. It uses a lock-on system called Z targeting, which is revolutionary. How many games feature this kind of combat now? So many. Even the Dark Souls games use a lock-on system like this. Well, it all started here. Ocarina wasn't the first game to come up with the idea of locking onto enemies, but it refined it to the point where even now it will feel instantly intuitive to anyone who's used to modern third-person action games. They put so much thought into it. For example, if you're up against multiple enemies, only the one you're locked onto will attack, preventing the player from being overwhelmed. Link also performs different sword slashes depending on whether he's locked on, locked off, or moving in different directions. It's just so cool. At this point, you can see that Ocarina of Time is stuffed full of content. A semi-open world, a bunch of mini-games, in-depth dungeons that test your brain and your combat skills, a great story, and a soundtrack that will stay with you forever. So after my latest playthrough, here's the important question. Is it worthy of being called a masterpiece all these years later? I'd say yes. It has aged, of course it has, especially in terms of frame rate and controls, but I think the level design and the pacing is still top notch and will impress anyone who decides to jump in for the first time. Your experience with this game might just hook you on the series for life. I've actually heard some rumblings that they might be working on a ground up remake for the Switch 2. If that's true, then I think it's a potentially wonderful idea, as long as they keep the structured, curated progression. That's one of the reasons this game shines. It takes you on a journey intentionally designed to thrill and challenge you in ever-increasing ways. Anyway, thank you so much for warping with me to the land of Hyrule. If you enjoyed this little look back at Ocarina of Time, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because I'll definitely be making similar videos like this in the months ahead. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever or whenever you are, and I'll see you next time.